continue on today in our Nehemiah adventure. Chapter 7. A lot of names and a lot of dates. Numbers. Names and numbers. I'm not going to do that to you guys today, though. We're going to go through this. That's kind of a spreadsheet. We'll just kind of deal with that when we get there. Last week in chapter 6, we saw that this wall project was nearly done. Just the gates needed to be finished. Just the gates needed to be hung in place. So they already had the very controlled access points in and out of the city. All they had to do was hang the gates so that they could lock those things down when they wanted to, when they needed to. So the enemies were desperate at this point. Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem and that whole crew that was coming against this whole project, they were desperate. This was their last-ditch attempt to leave any kind of opening in the wall. If they could stop the gates from being hung, then that would be good enough for them. They were desperate. It was their last chance to stop it. And so they sent messages 4 times to Nehemiah at this point. They started sending him letters. It's like, hey, man, let's meet up. Let's go out to the plain of Ono and hang out. Let's talk. And Nehemiah saw through that. They wanted to hurt him. There was 20 miles where bad things could happen. He could have a lot of unfortunate accidents going out to the plain of Ono, and they'd be saying, "Oh no," So 4 times they sent this message inviting him. Hey, bro, let's meet up. Let's talk. And then the 5th invitation came with an unsealed letter, an open letter. And we talked about how an open letter in those days, we seal letters so that we have privacy and nothing gets out and nothing gets in. It just arrives like you want it to. When you sent an open letter back then, it was like posting it on Instagram. You were just inviting people to read and to know what was in it. And boy, they threw all kinds of accusations in there. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that you're setting yourself up to be king, that you've appointed prophets to say that you're going to be king and that you're going to rebel against the king in Susa. Everybody knows this, So it's kind of a very thinly veiled threat that they're going to let this information out. If he doesn't come, it's like, so you want to come meet with us now? If he doesn't show up, then, people have been seeing this information all along the way, walking along. Hey, I got an open letter here. It's to Nehemiah. You want to see what it says? Look at that. And everyone's like, ooh, wow, everybody knows that, huh? He's really doing this? All these slanderous things that were 180 degrees away, just diametrically opposed to everything that Nehemiah wanted to do. He didn't want the power. He didn't want the money. He didn't want the fame. He wanted to accomplish what God told him to do. He wanted to build that wall. And so that had to be frustrating for him. There were even people inside that were playing both sides. It was mentioned last week, it was like watching a mafia movie. There's just this sticky, messy web of intrigue, and there's double agents. There's people working both sides on the inside of the city that were trying to get him in trouble. The one guy is like, hey, man, come in. They're going to kill you. They're going to kill you tonight. You better come. You better hide in the temple. And Nehemiah's like, I'm not going to do that. Because first of all, I'm not a priest. And second of all, that these guys were looking for anything that looked like impropriety or weakness. It's anything they could twist and frame and make Nehemiah look bad. And he wasn't having it. He wasn't doing it. He had the discernment to see through all these tactics. He did not play along with what they were trying to do. And so last week we saw the wall get finished in 52 days. Boom. So today, in chapter 7, so after the wall had been rebuilt and I had set the doors in place, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the Levites were appointed. I put in charge of Jerusalem my brother Hanani, along with Hananiah, the commander of the citadel, because he was a man of integrity and feared God more than most people do. So the wall was done, the gates were installed, the gates were hung, the access was controlled to the city. Mission accomplished. It was, this was the time God wanted it done. This was the person God wanted leading the project. It is done. So the enemies can't just waltz in anytime they feel like into the city. Now there's, it's access to the city is controlled. What comes in, what goes out is now controlled. So the wall was done, but it wasn't truly complete until there were gatekeepers and until there were worshipers in the city. The wall was done, but the work was not. Nehemiah and the people, they're still not taking the foot off the accelerator. We talked, way back when they got tired at the halfway point, when they could see that wall coming up and it was 50% and they were tired. And man, they probably could have used a vacation, but they didn't take a vacation. They didn't back off the accelerator. They didn't slow down. They kept at it. The 99.9%, when it was almost done, all they needed was the gates. The gates were done, and they just needed to be hung and put in place. And they didn't stop. They didn't stop then, thinking, well, maybe it'll just kind of pacify the enemies and get them off our back and, make them a little happy so they don't want to fight with us anymore. They didn't do that. They didn't back off the accelerator. Now the wall is done. The gates are in place. They are still not backing off the accelerator. They are still moving forward. Keeping that forward momentum. There's a temptation to rest on our accomplishments when we do something good. And every so often, we all do something good. We all follow God. We listen to him. God's like, I want you to do this, and you do that, and it happens. And like, thanks, God. And that feels good, right? You're riding the wave. Man, it's like surfing. You're on top of the wave and just feeling good. Oh, wind in your face. Surfing that good wave of success. And there's a temptation to rest there in our accomplishments. But when we succeed and when we fail, we should look to the horizon for what's next and continue to pay attention to our own spiritual being, our state of the union of our spirit and God, if you will. Pay attention to what's going on within us, within our hearts, within our souls, our spiritual being. There was a time in Joshua chapter 7, and most people are familiar with the story of Jericho. When they went and they walked around the walls, and he said, I want you to walk around those walls, and then I'll tell you when to blow the trumpet, and this time you blow the trumpet and the walls are going to come down. It sounds crazy, but it happened. And they felt pretty good. It's like, wow, look at us. We followed God. We did what God said. And now we have success. God has given us the city of Jericho. How cool is that? But Jericho had some nice stuff inside. And God's like, I want that stuff. I want that stuff dedicated to me. The gold you find in the treasury, the pretty nice things that they have in there are to be dedicated to me. Those are mine. I don't want you guys to take those. Those are going to be for me. I want those to be dedicated to me. And so feeling good, the Israelites were a little unfaithful with these devoted things. There was one guy in particular that took a big old block of gold and a pretty expensive robe, took a few things home and hid them, and that's not what God asked for. And so you kind of messed it up for everybody. They, not faithful in what God had asked for. And then they came to the city of Ai, and they were going to take that one as well. And Joshua didn't pray going into that one. I'm reading through, and he didn't pray. He didn't pray going into that one. And here we have, people that are blatantly disobeying God and taking some of the nice things and taking them home and, putting them in their closet and hanging on to those because this is nice. God won't notice. I deserve this. I can have a little bit of that, a little block of gold, super nice robe. This will be my stuff. And, they were feeling pretty good coming off that victory. And they let their guard down. They got a little bit lax going into the next one. It took them 2 times to take Ai. The first time, they kind of had their back ends handed to them in the battle because God's like, you guys are disobeying me. You didn't pray going in. This is what's going to happen. You guys are going to get beat on this one. It took them 2 times, and I'm glad it didn't take 3 because then it'd be I, right? So they let their guard down. They got a little lax with stuff when they were having success. They should have focused on their spiritual life, especially in the times of success, so they didn't get complacent. And they should have prayed. They should have kept up like everything was riding on it, because it was. So our prayer life and our relationship with God should help us. All they had to do was pray and do what God said, and they were going to be in sync with him and his will. When we pray, when we spend time with God, that kind of helps us sync with him. We got a lot of electronic devices these days that like to be synced, right? You plug your phone into your computer. It fetches all your iTunes and, kind of syncs everything up. So everything's on the same page. So everything's on the same program. Google does this. If you sign into Google anywhere, and, if you use Google, it's going to bring up your preferences. And, it's a marvelous way for them to, for algorithms to steal your information and know everything you know. Yeah, that does happen. But boy, it's sure convenient, isn't it? When you sign in and boy, there's my preferences, there's my Gmail account, there's my web pages I like to go to, kind of syncs everything. Got the sports watch, right? And every so often, if I don't sync it, the time gets a little bit off, and then I'll sync it, and it'll take all the information on here. It's like, yep, you've slept this much, you've done this many steps, and it'll put it into my phone and upload it to, the website, and it'll correct the time. So it kind of puts everything, on the same page. If you're old school, we talked about being OG, right? Old school stuff. You remember the old movies where going in for a military operation, synchronized watches. That's the old school version, right? They're synchronized watches. So we all got the same time. We're all on the same page, doing things at the same time. When we pray, when we spend meditative, contemplative time with God, when we read the Bible, when we read His Word, when we hear from the Holy Spirit, we sync with Him. That's why it's important. Otherwise, we'll go off and our little clock will be all out of whack and we'll have different information, So when we pray, man, we're coming to Him, we're syncing, we're downloading His will into us. We're downloading His will to overlay our will and get all on the same page. And that's what didn't happen in Joshua. We know, we're real familiar with, most of us, with the Jericho story, the Ai story. That's kind of a bummer. It starts out really bad. They got it eventually, but there are lessons to be learned there. So we shouldn't forget that when we have success, and we shouldn't give up on that when we blow it either. That we should be running after God. Sometimes when we blow it, it's like, I don't deserve to be with God. I can't talk to Him about this. Those times are also important to go and to pray and to sync up. With the master operating system, if you will, to sync watches with Him. So the wall was done, but now it was time to get the people synced with God. They didn't want this wall to end up just being a pile of rubble again. There was always that danger. If they neglected their relationship with God, if they neglected their worship, if they got lax and complacent, there was the danger of that wall ending up a pile of broken down rubble again. They didn't want that to happen. Walls, this wall, and any wall, is just an inanimate barrier. Without watchmen, and without something good happening inside, it's just a pile of rocks. Right? So this was a means to an end. Like the wall was not the finish line. The wall was complete, and that was like, one step to the next step, which was putting watchmen on the wall, putting worshipers in the city, and filling that city with worship of God that was now, protected from the influence of those who wanted to stop it, those who wanted to hurt them. Just an inanimate barrier without the watchmen. It's like tools. I got a rake in my garage my wife wishes I would use, and I'm just like looking at that thing going, why isn't that rake getting out there cleaning stuff up? Why doesn't that leaf blower get out and blow the leaves off the driveway? And it's because it's just a tool. It's it's there, but it only is any good when it's picked up and there are hands utilizing it. And wall's much the same way. It's just a tool. So gatekeepers were appointed to control access to the city. So these guys were up there and they're like going to determine who comes in, determine who goes out, determine when the gates are opened. There were musicians and Levites that were appointed. The Levites were the worshiper tribe. They were the worship leaders, right? And so there were musicians and Levites. They were appointed to facilitate worship of God on the inside. And so then Nehemiah, because he didn't want power or position, he handed the torch, the leadership torch, the governor torch, to two guys, Hanani and Hananiah. Hanani was his brother. We remember him from chapter 1. He was the guy that came out to Susa, and Nehemiah's like, how is it at home? And he's like, oh, it's bad. That was Hanani. The brother, a family member, like-minded on restoring the gate, like-minded on restoring the city. And then there was Hananiah, who it says is a man of integrity. And that's just, remember, integrity is just doing the right thing when people are looking, doing the right thing when nobody's looking. That's integrity. You're just going to do the right thing all the time. Doing it when it's popular, doing it when it's not. And then a man who feared God more than most. And I'm looking at that. I had to talk about a little bit about this fear of God. It's important. But what does it really mean? Proverbs 9:10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. And I start thinking of, what does that mean? Are we supposed to just be every time God comes around, we're going to he's going to smack me. I don't think that's the kind of fear we're talking about. Adam in the garden, after he took the fruit he wasn't supposed to have, him and Eve, they both partook of the fruit, and they're like, whoa, we're naked, we're going to go cover up, and so they made themselves some clothes, and God's coming around, Adam, where are you, man? I'm here to walk in the cool of the garden with my dude. We're going to hang out. Where are you? And Adam was afraid, wasn't he? And it was because of his own sin, because of what he had done, that now he was afraid and didn't want to present himself to God. And it's oh, I didn't come out because I'm naked. And God's all, who told you? Who told you that you're naked? I didn't say that, How did this come about? And then, Adam threw his wife under the bus. The woman you gave me. And God's slapping his forehead. No, it doesn't work that way. So Adam was afraid. I don't think we're supposed to live in that kind of fear-based relationship with God. It's not fear in the sense of a bully or an abuser. And, if somebody comes and robs you and holds a gun to your face, you're going to be afraid. And I don't think that's the kind of fear that God wants in our relationship with him. I know Jesus. And, if we know Jesus, Jesus says, if you know me, you know the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Jesus isn't like this. He never did this with his disciples. He never did this with, he had harsh words for the religious people sometimes when they were exercising authority and fear improperly over people. But he didn't utilize that. That was not his MO. He was not he wasn't playing the fear card. He wasn't doing the intimidation thing. The word fear in the Hebrew is yareh. I think it's supposed to be a roll in the R there, yareh. And it's not a fearing for your life. It's knowing that there is a God. And this is important to get up every day and realize that there is a God, and I am not him. I think every morning, I like to get up and just kind of remind myself, yes, there is a God out there. And, look outside and see the sun breaking the horizon and that new morning coming. And yes, there is a God. That God is not me. Thank goodness for me. Thank goodness for everybody that, I am not God. There's so many systems that will teach you that you are God. You don't want to be God. You don't want to be that. So there is a God. You are not him. And this kind of reminds me of the ocean. I love being at the ocean. I don't like going in the ocean so much. I have a fear, a respect. When you go and you see those warning signs that say there are riptides that will carry you out to sea, I take that seriously. I don't even want to go in there. But I love being at the ocean. I love experiencing the ocean. I go there and I realize that there is an enormous, and God put so many things in nature with enormous power that we can enjoy, but we have to respect, right? We have to have that healthy fear of it so we don't end up in a bad place. Being at the top of Yosemite Falls, boy, after a good winter, and that is a hike to get up there. And we went up there the first time, then we wanted to share it with other people, so we took my daughter and her husband at the time up there. And holy smokes, I didn't think they were going to make it. It's a tough hike. Then you get up there and you can go right out, and there's a rail, and that water is just thundering, just powerfully off the side of the mountain and falling that first, what is that, 1,800 feet, that first cascade before it hits rock. And I got enough respect. I like being there. It's beautiful. I like being there. I like being next to it, but I'm not going to go in the water. And there's signs all up above where the water's really nice, where you might want to go in. It's don't get in the water here, because, don't want to do that. So I have that. I like being there. I enjoy it. It's beautiful, but I have a respect for the power that is there. Gravity, right? I love being in high places, but man, I got to respect for gravity because gravity works. God put gravity on the earth. I'm glad, otherwise we'd all be like, flying up against the ceiling right now. And, gravity's a good thing. But there's a time, and I like being in those high places when it's beautiful and being on those mountaintops and those passes when you're looking out, you get to see forever. But then there's a whew on one side. I've got a respect for gravity. I don't need to be going out there and testing, to make sure it works. I know it's going to work, and I'm just going to be where I'm at and enjoy it. I have that respect. So this fear of God, we need to realize that we're operating with a force that is way bigger than us. And I think that's what it means. It's an awesome and awe-inspiring place to be. I love to be with God. I love spending time with God. I love when God speaks to my heart, or when he puts something up on our hearts and I'm going to lead you to do this, and then it happens, and it's like you see him at work all along the way. I love that. Awesome and awe-inspiring place to be and experience, but I don't dare try to impose my will onto God's. So, in this way, Hananiah feared God more than most people. Verse 3. I said to them, the gates of Jerusalem are not to be opened until the sun is hot. While the gatekeepers are still on duty, have them shut the doors and bar them. Also appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards, some at their posts and some near their own houses. So Nehemiah tells them not to open the gate until the sun is hot. You guys don't get to open the gate anytime you feel like it. It was customary in those days, and I'm like, why is that? When did they open the gates? And so I started doing a little research. It was customary to open the gates at sunrise. Customary to open the gates early so the merchants could get in, so they could set up inside the gate, so they could have a full day of business. But Nehemiah had not forgotten that there were enemies out there, that there were still people. And they were more mad than ever that the wall was completed, that wanted them dead. There were still people that wanted to harm them, that wanted to kill them, and he had not forgotten that. So by opening the gates later, everyone was awake. There's more people out and about. Everybody's up. Even guys like me would be up by then, So everyone was out and about. There were more people. There was more awareness of the situation should anything happen. There'd be a greater reactive force if the enemies tried anything. And then the gates would be closed while the gatekeepers were there. Again, just in case. Just in case. And residents of Jerusalem would be appointed guards, some posted near their own houses. And again, these are people with the skin in the game. Right? It's like, yeah, of course I'll watch near my own house. I got a lot of interest there with my house. So yeah, we'll some people were posted there, posted around in more strategic places, and it was the people with a lot in the game that were looking to defend, to keep their eyes open, to keep bad things from coming in. Verse 4, now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not been rebuilt. So my God put into my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. I found the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return. This is what I found written there. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles from Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and taken captivity, then returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town. In company was Zerubbabel, Joshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ramiah, Nahamani, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mizperth, Bigvai, Nehum, and Bana. Wow. So the city was large, and there was plenty of room. It was built, the walls were rebuilt on the old foundations when there were a lot of people there. And the thing is only 2% of the people had come back. And I kind of understand that. Right? They get uprooted and carted off and taken, like walking, we mentioned, from here to Seattle. And when they could go back, if things were going all right, I could totally kind of understand, well, the old Kenny Bob Davis, comedian bit when he got in his old van with hundreds of thousands of miles on is like, it'd start up, where are we going? Here's good. I could see them like, wow, going all the way back. That's kind of a rough go. So 2% of the people, that was all that went back. And these were the pioneer people. These were the people ready to do something new. But that's, there's not a lot of people in the city. There's a lot of open space behind the walls. And so it was up to God and up to his people now as he spoke to them to fill that city. It wasn't up to the enemies to fill the city anymore. They liked when they had free reign of the city, when they could fill the city with what they wanted to. They couldn't walk in and fill it with themselves. They couldn't walk in and fill it with their exploitation of the situation. They couldn't walk in and fill it with their own personal gain anymore. It was out of their hands. Instead, there were 2% of the people, the pioneers, those who were willing to make a clean break, to go back, to start over, to start something new, to not do the easy thing, to go back and do the hard thing of rebuilding and starting over. Clean break and a new start. Those were the people that were sold out for God, sold out for the cause of rebooting the city with worship of God at the core of it. Now, verses 8 through 72, who wants to read that? This is a spreadsheet, okay? And I will let you, if you like reading spreadsheets, I'll let you take that on. There's some good names, there's some, good stuff in here, but it's basically just a spreadsheet. It's a list of names, it's a list of how many of all the families. And what I will say is that this overlaps with Ezra 2. There's a very similar passage of Ezra in chapter 2 where he has this same list. And it was probably his list that Nehemiah came upon. It's like, well, let's find out who's here. Because each family, they're trying to trace it all back to who they came from, and each family, each tribe was responsible for different duties within the city and then within the temple. You had the Aaronic people, the people descending from Aaron, who were the priesthood. You had the Levites, who were the worship leaders. So everybody had a part to play. So let's see who's here, and let's see where we're gonna, how they're gonna be assigned. And so that's what he does. So I'll let you read through the spreadsheet. Maybe you're an accountant. Maybe you like that kind of thing. But I'm not going to put you through that today. Just know that it is a spreadsheet, that it is important, that it does overlap with Ezra 2. So we'll take it on down to verse 73. The priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the temple servants, along with certain of the people, and the rest of the Israelites settled into their towns. So people are settling in, right? These are the people, said in chapter 6, or verse 6 rather. These are the people that came back, those 2%, those pioneers, wanted to reboot and start over, do something good, do something right. So we're just going to leave it there today. Look at us. You can get through a whole chapter real quick if you don't read the whole thing. Don't forget, so as we walk away, these are the things that really spoke to me as I was going through this. I spent a lot of time, there were a lot of rabbit holes in this chapter, and it was good. And these are the things that God really put on my heart. Don't forget to sync with God in prayer. I think that's an important thing we got to take with us today. Sync with him in prayer, sync with him in relationship, sync with him in reading his word, listening to and obeying what the Holy Spirit says. Right, just spending that time with them. Don't forget to do that. Don't lose sight of your own need for this, even when you're not succeeding. Right, we can lose sight of that when things are going good. Those are the times we generally don't push in really close to God. That's the beauty of when we do go through hard times. We do go through difficulties. Those are the times we're running into Him. We're pushing into Him. We're pushing in hard into God. So don't lose sight of that, even when you're succeeding. Don't give up and lose sight of that. Even when you fail, even when you fumble the ball, even when you do an Adam and you're hiding out in the bushes, hiding from God because you're afraid in a way that He doesn't want you to be afraid of Him. Just remember that. Always sync with Him. Always spend that time with Him when things are going good, when things are going bad, when things are going meh. Just push in, sync with God so that He can download His plan into you, and you're all working on the same plan there. There's some takeaways that I saw as the wall begins to function. The wall's complete, is now functioning. Walls need to be watched in real time to be effective. And we talked about the importance of walls not only around Jerusalem, but we took that, we applied it to our own hearts, that we need to control what comes in and what goes out, right? There are gates where people go out and come in. There's the dung gate. You don't want that stuff piling up inside the city. You're controlling, keeping the enemies on the outside. You're controlling who comes in and who goes out. And our own hearts, our own souls need that kind of protection as well. Walls need to be watched in real time to be effective. This wall was co-watched by faithful people of integrity. It's good to have trusted, faithful people of integrity to help us watch our walls too. If you're ever like, man, I think something's sneaking in, I think I got a hole in the wall somewhere, reach out to somebody, have them co-watch your wall with you and see if we can get that gap, reclosed. The people who lived there were also responsible to keep watch, to monitor the situation, to make sure nothing got in that shouldn't be in there. So that's us living inside the walls. We should make sure that there's nothing coming in that doesn't belong in there. We ought to keep our eyes open too. The protected space inside was to be filled with worship of God and with his people growing into it. Enclosing emptiness with a fortified boundary and leaving it empty is pointless. Or if they just built the wall like, we're done, and sit down, like, boy, it sure is a lot of space in here. Sure is quiet. Wonder what we should do now. So there's another plan there. Enclosing it with a fortified boundary and just leaving it empty and quiet is just kind of pointless. And yet that's what we do sometimes when we're afraid and wounded. That's our reaction. We'll build a wall and close everything out, even the good stuff, and just keep it safe and quiet and pointless inside. We don't want to do that. We build walls sometimes and we keep everything out. That's a recipe for loneliness instead of protecting and developing the good stuff that's going on inside. That made me think of, we work in a place that's got really good walls. And I was thinking about that. I was like, what's the difference, You got a fortified barrier, but inside is not a happy place because you're keeping, the bad stuff in there. And we shouldn't do that with our own hearts. So that's a prison. There's a fine line between a prison and a city and a place where God lives, right? One, you're keeping the bad stuff out so that the inside stuff can grow and flourish. And the other one, you're just keeping the bad, unhealthy stuff in, and you're, there's that barrier that nobody shall pass. And the wall gave opportunity for a new start. That was the other thing. Now they were free. They were in a place of relative safety where they could worship God. They could just take care of that without worrying about being overrun by enemies at any minute. They could do that. They could have music. They could worship God. They could foster that relationship. And as we go on next week, it's going to continue that idea that there's the good stuff going on in there that is now protected, that is going to grow, that is going to flourish. It was an opportunity for a new start. God loves new starts. He loves new starts in us. Lamentations chapter 3 is, it says, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. And, as we come up on New Year's, I'd like to remind everybody that, every day is New Year's or New Day Eve. You got New Year's Eve, and it's like, we're going to make all these plans for the next year. Every day is New Day Eve. His mercies are new every morning. There is not much you can say that about. I would love to be able to go out to my car and have it have 0 miles on it every morning. It's like new every day. All the dents gone, all the miles gone, all the squeaky, funky noises gone. But it doesn't work that way. But it does with God. It's New Day Eve. He loves his new beginnings, and this was one of those. So as we watch our walls and, let's monitor what comes in. Let's monitor what goes out. Let's fill the inside with stuff that is pleasing to God, stuff that is good and healthy for us, that relationship, that constant syncing up, that worship of God. So he loves his new starts. So Lord, we thank you for the day. We thank you for this chapter, and thank you for the victorious music that was up to be done today that overlaps and plays very nicely into the victorious aspect of what we looked at today. And Lord, I just pray that in each one of our lives, that if we feel like we've accomplished something, that we wouldn't stop, that we wouldn't rest, that we wouldn't quit there, Lord, that we lift our eyes up constantly to the horizon, because we are never completely done on this earth. We're never done growing. We're never done doing good. We're never done being instruments of your will and your love here on this earth. And Lord, let us be looking always to the horizon. Let us be looking for what's next. And as we guard our walls, we pray that we would watch out for each other, that we would watch our walls from inside, that would be to the end of giving us a place of just open and free worship inside of you, Lord, of growth with you. And we just pray that these things would be resonating in our hearts as we go. We thank you for the day. We thank you for the place to meet. We thank you that the heat is on and that it's comfortable in here today. And Lord, we are just so thankful for your grace, for your mercy, that you reach out to us when we are at the peak of success and what you tell us to do, and then when we absolutely fall down on the job, you are there, Lord. You are there picking us up. You are there helping us move on. And Lord, let us be looking for you and syncing with you on both sides of that. We just thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.